Hey everyone, welcome to another lesson in this Tosca automation course. Today we are going to talk about another important section in Tosca, which is called the test case design section. Now we have already seen some of other important sections like the test cases section where you create your test cases, the requirements section where you can create your own requirements and map it to the test cases. The third section is the test case design section, where you basically design all your different test cases, your test case templates, right? And the different combinations of your test cases so that you can have maximum coverage across your application. Now let's see what are the different components of test case design, what are the best practices on how you can design your test cases or your test sheet, right? But before that, let's understand what this section is all about. So test case design helps us to plan and design our test cases in a way through which we can maximize the test coverage across the application and also reduce the efforts and redundancy so that you can do by making your test cases more reusable, and also you can create different combinations of test cases without much efforts, right? So test case design helps you do that. We'll see how it helps us do that. Now test sheets are the highest level components of the test case design section, right? So you have to create a test sheet where you can create different components and different combinations of your test cases so that you can organize your test data and the logical test structure for your test cases, right? Now, test sheets look pretty similar to an Excel sheet. Now, if you have worked on any particular automation tool like Selenium or any other tool, you will probably have used an Excel sheet to basically organize your test data, your test cases, or link your test cases to your test data, right? So you will go out and design this whole Excel sheet, and then you will basically you drive your automation to that particular Excel sheet, right? Now, the concept is pretty similar here also, but the way Tosca helps you is it just provides you with all the features within a section where you can do all of these things without even writing a single piece of code, right? Now, there are two parts to the test case design section, or you can say two components which are pretty important, which form the backbone of this particular section and help you to reorganize your tests and your test data, right? So these are the first one is called the attributes, and the second one is called instances, which we'll look at it later. But first, let's understand what is attribute, right? So attribute, you can consider them as the different characteristics or different features of your application based on the functionality which you're trying to automate, right? So think about a bank application, right? Or a credit card application where your different attributes could be the different kinds of bank accounts, the different types of bank customers, the different types of credit cards, right? The payment methods. So all of these will form the different attributes or basically your different features or application which you want to include in your test cases, right? So you have to basically define these attributes in the test case design sheet. Okay. Now, Tosca gives you some recommendations on how you can design or add attributes so that your test case design sheet is pretty optimal, right? Now you can design it as you want, but these are the recommended attributes which you should have at least for every test case design sheet. Okay. Um, so the first one is called the administration attribute, and this will not contain any test data, the actual test data, but it will contain some additional information about your test cases or your test design sheet, right? So things like who designed this particular test case design sheet, who is the business person who can who we can contact in order to know more about the requirements or the test cases, then which uh, test cycle this particular test case design sheet is included with. So whether it's a smoke test cycle or the regression test cycle, things like that, right? Or you can have additional comments where you can mention something about this whole test case design, uh, which test cases it includes, what it excludes, and a lot of other information. So all of these will be part of the administration attribute. The next attribute you should create is the precondition attribute, and this will, as the name suggests, will contain all the prerequisite data which is required to set up your test cases. Okay, so it could contain some login information, or if you have to create some prerequisite data from the application which will drive those test cases. So all of these should be part of your precondition attribute. The next is the most important one, or you can say the main attribute, which will contain all your test data for the test cases, right? So the test cases which will use the particular data will contained in the process attribute. Then comes the last and the final one, which is called the verification attribute. Now this will contain data which will be used for verification purpose, right? So once you have entered all the data and you have executed all the test cases, and you come to the verification part where you want to verify the expected results versus actual, and this will contain all that particular data. Okay, so as you can see, different data is organized into different attributes, and then every attribute will have some instances, right? And that is how you will try and design your test cases. Okay. The other point to remember is when you are creating attributes, attributes can have sub attributes, and sub attributes can have again more attributes, right? So you can create a tree of different attributes where there could be a parent and a number of child attributes. Okay, so there is no limit on how many attributes you can create or how many child attributes you can create in your test case design sheet. Okay. Now coming to another important point about attribute is there is a property which you can set for each attribute, which we have defined earlier, or which we have seen the four attributes, right? So you can have a property called business relevant. Now it has three possible values: yes, no, or result. Now what this means is it defines whether that attribute is of any business relevance or not, right? Or it is a result kind of business relevance, right? Now, administration would probably fall under not business relevant because it does not contain any actual data. It contains some additional information, which is not required for us to consider when we are designing our test cases, right? So this will, the business relevant could be set to no. Precondition and process will probably fall under business relevance, yes, because it contains actual data which will be using to design our test cases. So the business relevant should be set to yes. And similarly, verification will be used for verifying the data or for our test cases. So it will fall under business relevant result. Okay, so it will verify the result of our test cases. So these are the three different business relevant values which you can set for any of your attributes. I've given examples here based on the recommended attributes, but if you have other attributes depending on your application, you can have this business relevant property so that when you are designing your test cases, the not so business relevant attributes could be ignored. Okay, so this is all about attributes. Now let's see with an example how you can create your test sheet within the test case design section in Tosca, and how you can create these four different attributes for a sample application. So as you can see, now I've opened the Tosca Commander and I am in the test case design section. It is marked with a red folder. So every section will have these kind of colored folders which can recognize which section you are currently present in, right? So the test case design, there is a folder which is the parent folder, which is called the test case design. Now you can directly create a test sheet inside this. As you can see, in the right click option, there is an option called create test sheet, which looks very similar to an Excel sheet icon, right? But it's not recommended to do it directly under the test case design. Better create a different folder which you'll be working with. So I'll be working with this particular application, the Swag Labs, right? We'll try to create some test sheet with some attributes for this particular application. So let's name this with that particular application, right? So I will call it Swag Labs. Okay. Now you can have different these kind of folders for different applications within your project. Okay. Now under this, now I'm going to create a test sheet. Okay. So you have to click on create test sheet, and this will add a test sheet under this particular folder. Okay. Now I can call it anything. So I'll let me call this regression test sheet. Okay, so just give it a name so that you can recognize which test sheet is this. Now under this, let's see what we are going to design first from the application side, right? So you can see there are different usernames, and if there is a password to log in that particular user, so there are different types of users. And then we have got this products catalog, right? So let's think we have to calculate the shipping cost or the total cost of all the selected products by a customer, right? So this is the particular scenario, and we have to design test cases for these scenarios, okay, in this application. So thinking about this particular application and the scenario, what are the different attributes which you can create here, right? So as you can see, there are different products, right? So one of the attribute could be products, right? Under that, you can have sub attributes like the product name, quantity, price, right? um, and then that's the product's catalog. Similarly, you can have all these different kinds of attributes under process, right? So you remember we have to create 4 different attributes in our test case design sheet, right? So let's see how we can create different attributes first. Okay, so when you right click, you will see there is a red icon or a red button which calls the create attribute, right? This is called the create attribute. You can also create different instances. We haven't talked about it. Okay. Um, there's something called TDM, which is basically a database where you can create your test data, right? But let's talk about the attribute. So click on create attribute, and this should create your first attribute. And as discussed, we need to create 4 attributes for our test sheet. The first one is administration, the second one is precondition, the third one is process, and the last one is verification, right? So these are the 4 attributes, 4 recommended attributes by Tosca, which you should have for every test case design sheet. Now you can have more, you can have less, depends on you and your particular project. Okay. Now before we create more sub attributes inside these attributes, if you remember, we talked about a property called business relevant, right? So we need to define the business relevance for all of these 4 different attributes and the sub attributes which are present inside these attributes. Okay. Now, if you click on one of these attributes and if you go to the right hand side, right, where you have got the properties, right? So here you will see the last but one property, which is called business relevant. Now, by default, it is set to yes. Okay. If you don't change it, it will remain yes. But if you want to change that particular value, then you can select it from here, right? So the business relevant will change to no. right? So that's what we discussed. For administration, we don't require business relevant property. For precondition, we'll remain it yes. For process, we'll leave it as yes. For verification, we'll put it as result, right? So these are the four different attributes with different business relevance. As you can see, as soon as we change the business relevance, the color changes. Okay, so verification has a green color, administration has more a light color as it is no, and the process and precondition have got more dark red color, which is business relevance. Yes. Okay. So these are the different business relevant properties for different attributes. Now coming to creating more sub attributes within this attributes, right? So which we talked about. So under administration, we can create sub attributes like test designer, right? So who designed this particular test case. We can add some more details like business contact. Okay. And then we can also add the test cycle, which could be a regression or a smoke or something else. And then we can have some comments section where you can put in more details if you require, right? So these are the four basic sub attributes which you can have under administration. You can have more even. Now coming to precondition, here we'll say customer, right? Or we can say users. Okay. Under users, now we can have the type of user. Okay. So there can be different types of user. It could be a new user, it could be a registered user, right? Or any business user, technical user. So lots of different kinds of users which you can define. So this is one kind of precondition which I can think of. The other precondition could be the address or the personal details of this particular users, right? So we might require this later on. So we can define it under this precondition, right? So this is one precondition. You can have many other preconditions. Now coming to process, which will contain our test data, which is the main test data used for our test case design. So here we will define all the different products, right? So let's have a sub attribute called products. Under this, we can have more sub attributes, mainly name, and then I can have another one called price, and a third one called quantity, right? So these are the three sub attributes for products. And in process, then I need to think about checkout, right? Because once the products are selected, the user is going to check out the products, right? So let's see how it looks like in the application, and then we'll try to add some attributes here under checkout, right? So the user comes here, logs in, and then he selects some products which he wants to check out, right? So he goes into the cart, he checks the product names, description, price, and then he goes into the checkout where he is going to check out. So he has to fill this information. This we can keep it under the prerequisite data, right? So whatever data we are using for the customer, and then click on continue, and we'll come to the checkout overview page. Okay, so it will contain the product details and some other information like payment information, shipping information, the delivery type, and the total price of the items. Okay, so we can create attributes similarly in our checkout. Okay, so let's add the shipping information. Okay, and then we can have payment information. Okay, and we'll have the item total price. Now under these you can have again sub attributes depending on what kind of details are present in shared shipping information, different types of payment information, payment types, the different item total price, discounts, etc. Right? So you can have many other attributes. how you want to design your test case completely depends on you and your scenarios. Okay. I'm just trying to give you the best possible way you can design this. Okay. Now, coming to the final attribute, here we can have the confirmation message, which will contain some details, so we can verify that particular in this particular attribute. Okay, so you can do that. Once I click on finish, it is going to go to the confirmation screen where it will say thank you for your order. It will contain some message or some details. Now, depending on your application, you can also get some product details here or shipping details so that you can verify and put it under the verification attribute, right? So as you can see, we have got different attributes based on our scenario, right? And similarly, you can design different, you can either have different test sheets for each of your scenarios or your business area, or you can have a single test sheet which contains all your test scenarios, right? Now, in the next session, we are going to talk about instances, how you can link your attributes to your instances so that you can have different combinations of your test cases with different combinations of test data in your test case design sheet, right? And we'll take it forward from there.